5 years ago, Aaron Weston, billionaire CEO of Weston Enterprises, shattered Rosalie's world with a single cruel judgment. "You're infertile. You're nothing to me." He cast her out of his life, blind to the truth, that love could never be measured by heirs or legacies. But Rosalie wasn't broken forever. She had studied law in secret long before she married Aaron, only to abandon her dreams when she became his wife. After he discarded her, she picked herself up and finished what she started. Driven by fury, pride, and the need to build a life for the children growing inside her, she clawed her way up the legal world. Rosalie became one of the most respected corporate attorneys in the city, known for her icy brilliance, unshakable confidence, and the quiet mystery that shadowed her personal life. Now, fate has delivered a twist sharper than any courtroom drama. Weston Enterprises faces a scandal threatening billions, and the board brings in their best weapon, Rosalie, the very woman Aaron discarded. When she walks into the boardroom in her sleek black suit, every eye turns. For Aaron, it's more than shock. It's devastation. His ex-wife is now the counsel who holds the power to save or ruin his empire. And trailing behind her, hidden from the world until now, are 2 children with Aaron's steel-gray eyes. The billionaire who once branded her worthless is about to learn the price of underestimating Rosalie. The sound came first, the click of his pen against glass while the city smeared neon across his windows. Aaron Weston didn't look at me when he spoke. "You're infertile, Rosalie," he said, precise as a verdict. "This marriage isn't strategic. It's nothing to me." I slid the ring onto his desk as quietly as a signature, smoothed my dress, and turned toward the corridor, one palm low against my abdomen. Reflex, prayer, defiance. No one saw me leave. 5 years can fit inside a breath if you starve them enough. I fed mine with fire. The doors to Weston Enterprises part, marble, glass, steel, unchanged. I have changed. My heels strike clean through a lobby that once made me feel like a trespasser. Today I'm outside counsel. Today the ghost of his name on my letters means nothing. Security waves me through. "Ms. Rosalie," the guard says. The elevator whispers upward. I study the white file in my hand, tabbed in ink. Remedy strategy. Paper steadies breath. Camden's call last night cut clean. Board chair. Verbs like scalpels. Whistleblower, hidden subsidiary, federal probe inbound. We need you in the room. The doors open to a corridor polished to a reflection. Lilith rises from a bench, hands around a thermos. Behind her, tiny sneakers tap against chrome. Amelia traces a grout line. Adrian dismantles a pocket robot and lines its screws in a row. 10 minutes, Lilith murmurs. "Text Brielle if anything shifts," I say. Amelia looks up. "Mama, your suit looks sharp." "You made me brave." Adrian doesn't look up, but the corner of his mouth tugs the way his father's did when a solution clicked. "Back soon," I promise, squeezing Lilith's shoulder. Conference doors loom like vault hinges. Inside, the board, the crisis, the man who taught me the cost of mistaking possession for love. I push through. Cold air meets silk. Camden inclines his head. Eleanor's eyes count. Miles worries spreadsheets. Brent's smirk is a blade. Cheryl's phone glows. Dalton stands at the far end, steady. And at the window, daylight behind him, Aaron. For one irrational second, my body mistakes memory for present. The next, truth bulldozes it flat. He turns. Shock redraws his mouth. His eyes, steel gray, drop to the file in my hand, then jerk back as if the past just filed an injunction. "Good morning," I say. "Let's proceed." Camden gestures to a seat. I remain standing. As outside counsel, I'll need unfettered system access, with Dalton as liaison. Regulator contact within 72 hours is likely. Our aim is containment, cooperation, surgical amputation. Miles clears his throat. "We've prepared disclosures." "Redacted into suspicion," I say. It reads like guilt in court and blood in the water. I let the room feel it. "You hired me to protect value. We do that by protecting truth first. Brent leans back. And what if what survives isn't Aaron? He flinches. I look to Dalton. Security anomalies? Multiple, he says. Source unknown. Not unknown for long. I slide the plan forward. Freeze discretionary channels. Audit communications outside governance. PR runs through legal. Cheryl, nothing public without my signature. Optics demand, Cheryl begins. Truth before optics, I say. We won't lie and then manage the light. Eleanor nods. Agreed. Aaron finally speaks. Rosalie. The name cracks. I didn't know the board had... You don't have to finish, I say, a bridge lifting in fog. Object later. The court will overrule you. A flicker of almost smile ghosts his mouth. We have a whistleblower. Atlas is moving on our flank. We're bleeding. You called, I answer. And I came. We move across the map. Tactics, timing, appetite. The choreography of confessing without dying. When I speak, Aaron listens. When he speaks, I listen for the breath before concession, the pause that means he'll push risk. We do not touch the shape of our marriage. 3 days, Camden says. Maybe less. Then we won't waste the first one, I answer, closing the binder. The table throws back a woman who learned to breathe fire. Full cooperation. If I'm undermined, I walk. Threat noted, Brent says. Boundary, I correct. The meeting dissolves. Chairs scrape, papers hiss. Dalton falls in at my side. Cheryl peels off to brief. Eleanor murmurs to Camden. Miles exhales. Aaron remains. Rosalie, he says softly. About that day. Don't, I say, a bridge lifting in fog. We are colleagues while this ship burns. He swallows whatever confession he brought. Understood. I turn. The door sighs and the corridor breathes me in. Lilith stands. Amelia hums. Adrian aligns his screws into a perfect T. Then the universe bares its teeth. Aaron steps out as a courier rushes by. A folder slaps the floor and papers skid. I kneel to help, so does he, and when he looks up, Adrian is looking back. Steel gray meets steel gray. A line pulls taut between them, invisible and loud. For a heartbeat, nobody breathes. Adrian tips his head, the way Aaron once did when a problem clicked. The boy's hand flattens over the robot's chest as if to shield a small secret. Amelia's song stops. Lilith's thermos creaks. I gather pages I cannot read and rise. Excuse us, I say to fate, to the part of me that mistakes recognition for safety. We were leaving. Lilith herds them toward the lounge. I do not look to see whether Aaron is kneeling in shock or standing with fury or calculating the ghosts between what he knows and what he thinks he knows. I have work, a company to cauterize, children to guard from the way stories devour the tender. Inside the war room, Brielle pins exhibits to glass. How bad? Bad enough to be honest, I say, honest enough to win. She passes me a marker. Where do we start? With the first cut, I answer, circling subsidiary poisoning what we built. And with a question the world will try to answer for us unless we claim it first. If someone shattered you, would you ever stand in the same room again to save them? Dawn found Rosalie already moving. A quiet choreography of kettle steam, pencil lists, and the soft thud of 2 pairs of small feet down the hall. Calm, for her, was not the absence of noise, but the ritual that arranged it. She folded lunches, checked homework, braided Amelia's hair, retied Adrian's laces, and pressed her palm to each forehead as if blessing the day. Lilith floated through the kitchen with practiced grace, rescuing a leaning tower of bowls, setting out vitamins, and whispering reminders the way a lighthouse speaks to ships. Breakfast was negotiated territory. Amelia traded strawberries for extra drawing time, promise sealed in crayon. Adrian earned more syrup by explaining the if-then logic that made his robot turn left when it tapped a chair leg. Rosalie watched with the affection of a general inspecting brilliant troops and the restraint of a mother who knew brilliance needed room. At the curb, Monica waved from the school gate, a bright scarf against the pale morning. She knew enough to love the twins ferociously and to ask Rosalie nothing she could not give. Savannah arrived with the scent of rain and citrus on her coat, physician's bag slung over one shoulder, kindness tucked into every motion. She listened to hearts, peered at throats, and recorded temperatures without fanfare. "Healthy? Both," she said, tapping her tablet. "Hydration, sleep, sunlight, and fun." Rosalie smiled with the polite obedience of someone who schedules wars. Savannah left a cartoon bandage sticker on Adrian's robot as if machines could heal, kissed Amelia's crown, and promised to text after clinic. The city opened its lanes like arteries, steady and forgiving. Rosalie drove with the patience of someone who once measured worth in speed. The twins debated whether clouds looked like continents or creatures. She decided they could be both. At drop-off, Amelia slipped a folded sheet into her mother's hand. "Art homework," she said. The paper held a silhouette, tall, shoulders squared, eyes shaded like storm glass, a small robot cupped in the figure's hands. Rosalie refolded it carefully, breath steady by force of will, and slid it into her briefcase between statutes and schedules. She had returned to glass-bright towers for reasons as unromantic and as unarguable as math. Jobs saved, pensions protected, the public faith that corporations could be governed rather than indulged. Mastery mattered more than memory. If the work grazed old scars, she would not pretend they did not ache. She would simply refuse to let ache choose her moves. She whispered goodbye, watched two small hands disappear into a tide of backpacks, and turned toward the part of the city where language could cauterize. Brielle was already in the downtown office, coat off, sleeves rolled, focus absolute. She had the loyalty that never confused truth with comfort and wore it like armor. Color-coded binders sprawled across the table, each tab a map coordinate in a war no one else knew how to fight. "Updates from Camden and Eleanor," she said. "Miles wants timelines. Brent wants assurances. Cheryl wants a miracle. Kevin wants blood." Rosalie skimmed messages with the speed of muscle memory. Miles gets dashboards by noon. Brent gets nothing he can distort. Cheryl gets silence and then facts. Kevin gets ignored. She flipped to Dalton's overnight summary and smiled, not from pleasure, but recognition. He documented like a man who knew evidence could be snuffed out with a rumor and resurrected with a timestamp. "Dalton stays point," she said. "We funnel every request through him." Brielle nodded, already dialing compliance. The air hummed with the discipline of a plan that could hold. No one said Aaron's name unless strategy required it. The omission was not repression. It was architecture. The life Rosalie had built stood on beams that did not creak when the weather turned. Across the river, in a penthouse that mistook height for immunity, Aaron watched a city that kept moving whether he slept or not. He hadn't, not really, in years that bled into one another like tide lines on stone. Control had been his drug and his disguise. He had chosen it the night he ejected tenderness as if tenderness were a defect. Now control frayed at the edges. The housekeeper's steps sounded like judgment. The refrigerator hummed like a witness reciting facts. He placed his phone beside a blank legal pad and did not trust either. Miles called before 7, voice already hoarse from a day that had not begun and somehow already had. "We need a truce with legal," he said. "Rosalie will deliver if we get out of her way. I know the board's stance. I'm asking yours." Aaron rubbed his jaw, felt stubble scrape his palm, and calculated cost without pretending numbers could measure consequence. "You'll have what you need," he said. Miles exhaled gratitude and pivoted to covenants and cash, the astrophysics of keeping a company aloft, while gravity sharpened its knives. Brent arrived with cologne and ambition, smile calibrated to read as competence until hunger showed through the polish. "Optics," he said, sitting without invitation. "We project confidence. Cheryl wants a camera on compassion." Aaron looked at him as if the word itself were counterfeit. Compassion you can schedule means nothing. Brent laughed as though they were colleagues rather than opposites, left a slick of plans, and retreated. Cheryl's memo landed next. Draft statements, tiered responses, carefully curated sorrow. She was not cruel. She was trained to shape light. Aaron almost approved and then closed the window. Back downtown, Brielle brewed tea and mischief. "Before Karine arrives," she said, "do you want to rehearse not flinching when she presses the old bruise?" Rosalie answered by aligning a pen with the pad's margin. The door opened and the past insensible heels stepped through. Karine's hair was silver now, her eyes as precise as always. She studied Rosalie the way a mountaineer studies weather. "You are steady," she said, "and you are flammable. Which will you be to yourself today?" "Steady," Rosalie answered. Karine's gaze sharpened. "Good, then keep it so. Do not let this case pull you back into his gravity. You built yourself beyond him. Don't let the boardroom become the battlefield where you bleed for the past." Rosalie held her mentor's stare. "I won't," she said, the words firm enough to pass inspection. But when Karine slid a folder across the desk, inside it lay Amelia's sketch, graphite and longing, a tall figure with storm-dark eyes and a small robot in his hands. Rosalie refolded the paper with trembling control and slipped it back between statutes and schedules. The promise still rang in the room, but the sketch whispered otherwise. The practical world returned. Call Camden, brief Eleanor, grid the week, tame the flood. Confidence gathered like heat before noon. Rosalie briefed Camden on contours and Eleanor on spine. She refused Cheryl politely, refused Kevin silently, and accepted Dalton's latest packet with gratitude that did not need words. Lilith texted a photo of Amelia's braid and Adrian's valiantly knotted tie, anchoring the law to the life it meant to protect. Savannah added 3 blue hearts and a reminder about sunscreen, because even winter offers light where it can. Brielle plotted hearing strategy while color tabs multiplied like bright, tidy vows. Aaron opened a blank document, stared at the cursor's blink, and discovered that what he wanted most was absolution without confession, a paradox with no legal path and no moral one either. He set the phone face down and did something he had not done in years. Nothing. The nothing rang louder than any alert. In it, he admitted that the shape of his days had been designed to prevent this moment, and that the prevention had failed. He poured coffee down the sink and tasted bitterness anyway. What Rosalie feared most was not failure, but the muddling of motive, the way righteous work could hide a hunger to be seen by the man who had refused to look. She named the fear, filed it, and set a weight on the folder. Then she opened Amelia's drawing again and allowed exactly 1 heartbeat of sorrow before she folded it away. Evening would bring subpoenas and a gasp of sleep, but morning belonged to foundations. The twins ran at recess. Monica clapped for the relay. Dalton watched corridors and logs with a patient hunter's calm. Brielle, left alone for a minute, tested the word family on her tongue and pretended it was a legal term of art. Across town, Aaron stood at a window and learned that empty rooms do not absolve anyone, they only echo. The city kept its own counsel, so did they. Between them stretched a case, an economy, and 2 small lives drawing pictures of a future without knowing which parts were prophecy. The day moved forward, patient as a judge, waiting to see who would speak first and what it would cost to be believed. The injunction arrived like a thunderclap. Helena's petition for Atlas sought an emergency freeze on Weston's operating accounts, payroll, and vendor lines, citing a buried subsidiary that looked like a siphon. The move was simple and lethal. Cut the arteries, force panic. News hit the boardroom while the coffee was still hot. Camden read the filing twice. Eleanor underlined 4 phrases and closed her pen like a blade. Miles stared at the cash waterfall and saw a cliff. Brent spoke first, too quickly, too smooth, proposing optics and a press hit that would read as noise to a judge. Cheryl reached for her deck. Dalton watched the monitors. Rosalie did not sit. She placed a single page on the glass. "We will oppose the freeze and volunteer targeted disclosure," she said. We keep the heart beating by admitting where the bruise is. Camden nodded. Eleanor gave the authority motion her quiet yes. The board granted Rosalie full control, war room access, privileged channels, and power to bind the company to the strategy she drew. Forced proximity became weather. A glass room turned into the center of gravity. Whiteboards with timelines, coffee beside annotated statutes, servers translating dread into data. Aaron took the chair opposite Rosalie, not as a husband and not quite a supplicant, but as a man who knew the air between them held history and oxygen in equal measure. He tried to speak before work could make speech irrelevant. "Rosalie," he began. "We're here to stop a collapse," she said. "Apologies don't file." She handed him a packet and watched his jaw set and then unset, as if relearning a muscle. Helena, immaculate, orchestrated a whisper that reached finance desks before the hearing notice hit the docket. An off-books entity carried a name designed to blend into vendor dust. Her petition linked it to payments that suggested fraud without proving it, relying on speed and suggestion. Kevin, the investigative journalist, caught the scent and called Cheryl, then Miles, then the legal line no outsider should have. Brielle let his voicemail finish, saved the number to a list named Do Not Feed, and deleted it. "He's baiting you," she told Rosalie. "He's baiting all of us." Rosalie tilted her head and pivoted to the calendar. They would need declarations from compliance, escrow proofs for payroll, and a narrative that conceded the subsidiary while refusing the story Helena wanted to staple to it. "We own the map," she said. "Not the myth." Dalton's sweep hit like a pin through silk. Metadata around several leaked documents clustered inside the C-suite's orbit, a pattern of exfiltration masked by routine. He projected heat maps and timestamps, lines that curved near Brent's domain and then dispersed. He did not name a suspect. He drew a corridor. Aaron watched and swallowed a curse. Brent raised his hands. "If you're accusing me, accuse me." "I'm describing physics," Dalton said. "The vectors point one way. We confirm before we conclude." As subpoenas assembled, proximity did its grind. Night bled into dawn against the glass. Brielle fed printers and people. Miles translated solvency into sentences a judge would accept. Eleanor leveraged favors for an emergency setting. Camden took calls and built a scaffold out of obligation and trust. Helena's hearing opened with choreography. Voice cool, exhibits crisp. She painted the subsidiary as a deliberate shadow and asked the court to shut the lights. Rosalie rose with her own architecture, payroll affidavits, escrow confirmations, audits initiated before the petition, a narrow concession that admitted sloppiness without admitting intent. She offered a consent regime tight enough to keep blood moving while they cut out the clot. The judge asked the only question that mattered. "If I don't freeze, what prevents further harm?" Rosalie answered with a consent order, weekly disclosures under seal, and a third-party monitor from a list the court would approve. Helena objected on trust. Rosalie answered on verifiable fact. The judge took it under advisement and warned both sides that the next misstep would bring the full weight of her docket. In the corridor, cameras waited. Cheryl tried to intercept. Kevin slipped through with a badge and a history. "Counsel," he said, "how far would you go to protect a company that didn't protect you?" Rosalie looked past him to the door and the security line. "I protect the people who work here," she said, "and the truth that keeps their work meaningful." Kevin tilted his head. "Truth has a personal address." His eyes flicked toward Aaron. "Yours shares a zip code." As he stepped back, Kevin murmured to his recorder that he knew why counsel took this case so personally, and that the city would know soon. Back in the war room, proximity tightened. Aaron brought a box of documents and an apology that failed to find words. "I've signed the authority Camden requested," he said. "You have every door." Rosalie accepted the box and not the overture. She handed him a list of custodians and deadlines. "Every door," she repeated. He nodded. Outside, dusk bruised the sky. Inside, Dalton's logs glowed. The anomaly pulsed again. Brent stopped by to perform support and sow doubt. Atlas doesn't come this hard unless they're sure, he said. Maybe we sacrifice the arm to save the body. Rosalie didn't blink. We don't amputate to appease a rumor. We excise because we've proved rot. Brent laughed. Aaron said, Optics without facts are weather. We build in steel. Near midnight, Eleanor texted, Hearing continues at 9. Judge leaning toward consent order if we deliver names and controls. Camden followed. Deliverables by dawn. Brielle stacked declarations. Miles summoned figures. Cheryl drafted a statement. Lilith sent a photo of the sleeping children. Rosalie touched the image with a thumb and set the phone face down. Dalton, last at the monitors, isolated a packet exfiltration disguised as calendar sync. The user profile belonged to a shared terminal outside the executive suite but logged in under rotating credentials managed by Brent's office. He marked it, time-stamped it, and finally said the thing he had been disciplined enough not to say. The corridor isn't a metaphor anymore. Silence settled across the table. Aaron met Rosalie's eyes. For once, history didn't crowd the space between the look and the order. Document it, Rosalie said. Preserve without alerting. We move at dawn. The night thinned toward patient gray. And they did. Dawn arrived on the heels of Dalton's timestamps, and the war room moved as one organism toward court. Rosalie's plan lay in neat stacks. Brielle's tabs flared. Aaron signed the last custodial certification. The judge reconvened at 9. Helena was already there, composed and glacial. Rosalie opened with precision. She conceded the subsidiary's existence, then filleted the insinuations. Escrow proofs, payroll flows, prior audits, third-party monitors, conflict checked. When Helena pressed for a total freeze, Brielle countered with precedent that bracketed Atlas's standing, competitor harm is not the public interest, capped with a circuit decision judges quote like scripture. The court will not suffocate a company to investigate its cough, Rosalie said. We consent to monitored breathing, scalpel, not shield. Helena tried optics. The public must see firmness. But the judge cut her off. The public must see fairness. She adopted the consent order, added weekly sealed reports, and warned that one misstatement would bring the hammer down. The freeze died without drama. In the corridor, lights bloomed. Rosalie passed without slowing. Fix the truth, not the optics, she said. Brielle ghosted cameras. Kevin angled toward Aaron. Convenient timing. Your former wife saving your governance. Aaron walked on. Convenience doesn't file declarations. Back at headquarters, work metastasized. Dalton traced exfiltration corridors. Miles rebuilt cash dashboards. Camden took investor fires. Eleanor paired updates to nouns. Brent walked the floor with a supportive grin that didn't reach his eyes. He paused at the war room door, watching Rosalie at the board and Aaron at the table. Aaron noticed tells he had not earned the right to notice. Amelia, visiting after school with Lilith, counted chairs in threes, fingers tapping pattern pause. Adrian asked a question, tilted his head as if catching the answer at an angle. He looked away. Late afternoon brought misdirection. A photograph landed on a finance blog. Rosalie beside a tall, well-dressed man leaning close, smiling. Within minutes, Cheryl fielded questions about whether outside counsel's paramour posed a conflict. Kevin threaded the image into a tweet. The man was a donor at a scholarship breakfast Karine hosted. The facts were unrelated, the frame was not. Aaron saw the photo in a board chat and felt jealousy move through him with humiliating efficiency. An ache, fast and clarifying. He closed the chat, then walked to the war room where Rosalie argued for a narrower custodian list to spare non-essential teams a discovery dragnet. Congratulations, Brent murmured as Aaron passed. She seems happy. Aaron didn't slow. Inside, Brielle had already pulled the facts. Rosalie didn't defend. It's noise, she said. We have signal to protect. The ache lived under Aaron's ribs like unspent breath. Cheryl pushed for a glossy press conference. A podium ends speculation. We control the narrative. No, Rosalie said. We don't teach a lie not to lie. Fix the truth, not the optics. Eleanor backed her. We're stewards, not candidates. Cheryl subsided, scripting a quiet statement. Night layered over glass. Lilith texted that the twins had homework in the lounge, then piano practice. Rosalie permitted it. Better clothes than far, while the city fed on rumor. Adrian's robot, battered from a fall, lay in pieces on a low table. He frowned at a stripped screw. I can't get it to catch, he told Lilith. Ask tomorrow, she soothed, and took him for cocoa. Aaron, stepping off a call with Camden, paused at the wrecked toy. The room was empty, fluorescent hum made a thin lullaby. He sat, opened the casing with the patience of a man disarming an old tripwire, coaxed the bent thread back with a needle from a forgotten sewing kit, seated the gear, adjusted the axle, taped a loose wire, and snapped the case shut. He set the robot upright and arranged the screws Adrian had lined like tiny soldiers. Then he left. By the time Rosalie crossed the lounge, the room was still again. She stopped, recognized the constellation, and the old tug in her chest drew tight. She touched the robot's shoulder as if it were warm. On the chair back, a single gray thread clung. His suits had many twins, but this shade felt personal. She swallowed, then moved on. Brielle met her in the hall. Consent order entered, she said. Helena's press is calling failure vigilance. Rosalie nodded. Good. We keep working. Working meant more misdirection. An anonymous email promised a keycard dump and delivered a dead end. Another claimed the leak began in legal. The logs disagreed, but doubt sprouted side glances at interns. Dalton quarantined the noise and highlighted the signal. The calendar sync exploit repeated at regular intervals around Brent's access point. He pin-flagged midnight. Aaron stood outside the music room, listening to a piano prelude played a measure at a time. Amelia practiced the way she counted. 3 notes, breath, 3 notes, breath. He remembered regulating himself with habits that looked like quirks. His father's disappointment had sounded like a door closing. He had vowed never to teach that sound to anyone. He returned to the war room. Rosalie followed minutes later, composed, the image of the mended robot filed behind her eyes. Monitor shortlist goes out at 9, she said. Camden can broker the judge's favorite first. Aaron nodded. Done. Their gazes met like 2 planes crossing, the same sky differently used. Cheryl delivered a draft statement. 2 sentences, facts and process, no adjectives. Rosalie approved. Miles brought a liquidity update with a thin smile that meant survival. Barely. Eleanor scheduled a governance vote that would look like humility and function as control. Brent complimented everyone, especially Rosalie, with a tone that glittered like broken glass. Night deepened, the building thinned. Lilith gathered backpacks, shepherded yawns, promised Saturday pancakes. Brielle clicked off the lamp by the board, leaving 1 pool of light and 2 figures inside it. Beyond the windows, the city glittered. Inside, the robot waited to be claimed, the consent order to be followed, and the leak to be lured into daylight. Somewhere, Kevin sharpened a headline. Somewhere closer, Brent watched clocks and crafted alibis. The next move belonged to midnight, and to whoever could keep breathing until the hour told the truth. That night. Dalton's audit finished at dawn, a lattice of logs and heat maps that turned suspicion into geometry. The corridor he traced resolved into a door, Brent's rotating credentials, a calendar sync exploit, and after-hours exfiltration routed through a vendor shell Helena used for Atlas. He printed nothing, saved everything, and walked the evidence to Camden and Eleanor. Camden read once, then twice. Eleanor asked 3 questions. Chain of custody? Intact, Dalton said. Attribution? Corroborated. Risk to operations? Containable if we move now. The chair's jaw set. Notify legal. Rosalie already knows. In the war room, Brielle pinned the anomaly sequence to glass, red thread leaping across timestamps. Rosalie stood long enough to feel anger without letting it choose her next step. "We purge access, preserve devices, and call the judge inside an hour," she said. "No press." Aaron listened, knuckles white on a chair. Across the hall, Brent practiced indignation. When security approached, he smiled. "This is absurd." Dalton's team escorted him to a quiet room, inventoried hardware, mirrored drives, and suspended credentials. Eleanor's other task, fiduciary, she told herself, landed on Aaron's desk minutes later in a manila envelope. Inside lay a lab report and a note in Eleanor's hand. Board risk assessment, confidential. The chain was almost accidental. A stray coffee cup, a private panel, 2 profiles, 1 certainty. Probability, 99.99%. Result, paternal match. He did not sit. He took the envelope and the shame that rode with it and walked to the only person who could turn data into meaning. Rosalie looked up at the knock. She was alone. Brielle had stepped out. Aaron closed the door and placed the envelope between them. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "Eleanor did. But I needed the truth, and here it is. And I am sorry for every second I lived as if it were otherwise." She read the numbers as she read a statute, then closed her eyes. "You called me infertile," she said. "You did not ask a second opinion, I did. The doctor said stress could be a thief and time a healer. Weeks later, I suspected. I stood outside your office and watched you trade tenderness for strategy. I decided I would not beg to be wanted. I chose the children and myself." "I deserve that," Aaron said. "I have thought of 1,000 versions in which I do not say the thing I said. All of them are cowardice. I said it. It was mine. And they are mine. If you will allow me any part of their safety, I will take instruction like oxygen. Safety is not a generosity," she said. "It is a mandate. You will follow my plan, including silence where noise endangers them. You will not make a spectacle to absolve yourself." He nodded. "Yes." Brielle slipped back in. "2 things," she said. "The judge approved the device preservation order. And Kevin just called my line. He says he knows why counsel takes this case so personally. He wants an on-camera exclusive within 12 hours, or he runs a feature naming Aaron as the twins' father, sourced to internal confirmations and a photograph raising questions about counsel's romantic entanglements." Rosalie's palm flattened once, Aaron's shoulders squared. "Atlas," he said. Brielle nodded. "Helena's fingerprints are on the timing. If the piece lands before we stabilize, the consent order becomes a microscope and the stock tinder." "We do not bargain with extortion," Rosalie said, "but we do get ahead of it." She turned to Aaron. "You will draft a statement acknowledging governance failures and committing to reforms, with no personal references. Cheryl will release facts only. Dalton will finish preservation and secure Brent's communications with Helena. Camden and Eleanor will prepare a closed briefing with the judge if Kevin publishes. If he airs faces, we file to seal and to enjoin," Brielle said. "Emergency grounds to protect minors." Aaron looked at Rosalie and saw not the woman he had disbelieved, but the one who had built a fortress out of clarity. "What about me?" he asked. She answered the part that mattered. "You will stand still and do no harm." Kevin wrote like a man feeding a furnace, copy framed as accountability, whispers lacquered into claims. He had a headline and a justification ready. The public's right to know, the cost of secrecy. Helena supplied context with deniability. Atlas would pretend surprise. Dalton returned with a drive and a map. "The leak is Brent," he said to the core team. "He passed documents through a shell Helena controls. We have handoffs and timestamps." Camden exhaled. Eleanor pressed a palm to the table. "We move to suspend and refer," she said. "Rosalie, brief the judge. Miles, model impact of a temporary executive shuffle. Cheryl, prepare for containment with no names." "Do Amelia and Adrian know anything beyond their world?" Aaron asked. Rosalie shook her head. "They know piano and robots and that their mother loves them. I'd like to keep it that way. Work resumed, calls stacked, drafts sharpened, security boxed Brent's office. Evening neared, a calculus. What you protect versus what you announce. When the sun slid down the glass, Aaron found Rosalie again. Whatever I am in this moment, he said, I am theirs. I will stand where you tell me to stand. I will not reach for a microphone. I will not reach for you unless you ask. She gave a nod. It was not forgiveness, but it was permission to keep breathing. Brielle's phone lit. Kevin had booked studio time. Cheryl's screen pinged. Outlets wanted comment. Miles brought a model that did not crater the company. Eleanor lifted her gaze. We do not blink, she said. Outside, the city tilted into lights. Inside, a man who prized legacy over love learned what legacy requires when love is neglected. Relent, repair. And because this is the question that divides doors from doorways, if the person who broke you finally owned their mistake, would you let them fight for you or keep the door closed? Rumor began as a whisper and became a siren by lunch. Finance blogs called it accountability. Gossip feeds sold it as sin, Weston's CEO, secret heirs, counsel entangled. The consent order held, but markets are faith systems. Faith trembled. The stock dipped once, then again. Cheryl watched tickers blanch and murmured, "Hold the line." Kevin teased a feature with a blurred photo and a promise. Names at 6. Inside headquarters, phones hissed. Miles recalculated cash like a man bailing with a teacup. Eleanor fielded directors whose courage correlated with price. Camden's voice stayed level. Dalton locked the network. Brent, suspended, denied everything through counsel. Rosalie read the rumor twice. She opened a document and titled it, Resignation. Brielle saw the screen and went still. Don't, Brielle said. I won't let them put faces on a chart, Rosalie answered. I won't gamble their days on our stamina. This hands Atlas the win, Brielle shot back. They want you gone because you're the spine. If the price of winning is the children, Rosalie said, we're bartering with souls. Brielle's jaw worked, then unclenched. Then hide me in your resignation, she said. If you go, I go. But I'll say it once more. That's surrender, disguised as love. It's a shield, Rosalie said. Down the hall, the board assembled with the panic of people who had promised certainty and now feared the invoice. Camden convened, Eleanor's pen a metronome, Miles with graphs, Cheryl with statements, legal chairs, empty. Aaron entered last. We have to consider removal, a director said. If a personal scandal endangers value. Personal scandal? Eleanor cut in. Our danger is governance and a rival who set the fire. Don't mistake smoke for source. Miles tried to thread reason. Stability matters. Reassigning authority temporarily may reassure lenders. Camden spread his hands. Lenders have been reassured by one thing this week. Rosalie's plan executed by Rosalie. Strip authority from Aaron if you must, but you cannot strip her from the solution. Aaron remained silent until silence turned to cowardice. Remove me, he said. If a throat must be cut to prove we can bleed responsibly, take mine. Keep Rosalie. Cheryl looked up and saw a statement that required no polish. Camden breathed out. Noted, he said. The vote was scheduled, powers curtailed, contingencies aligned. Aaron left to the sound of people promising to be brave later. In the corridor, Dalton handed him a summary of Kevin's segment. We can try to enjoin, Dalton said. Odds? Long, Aaron answered. Do it anyway. Lilith shepherded the twins through a maze of adult noise. Amelia clutched a sketch pad. Adrian dragged his backpack. In the lounge, a junior analyst bled the internet through his phone. The man with storm eyes, yeah, that's what the blog said. If it's true, the stock... The phrase hit Amelia like cold water. Storm eyes. She had drawn them 100 times because they were beautiful, and because drawing them made something quiet in her chest. She hugged the sketchpad, face going still. "What is it, love?" Lilith asked. "I think I broke something," Amelia whispered. "I won't draw robots anymore. I won't draw the man. If I stop, it will stop." Adrian, who measured worlds by cause and effect, touched her sleeve. "You didn't break anything," he said. "You can't crash a company with crayons." But his voice had a question in it because adults' faces suggested drawings could change gravity. Lilith crouched. "None of this is because of your pictures. Grown-ups make grown-up messes and then try to sweep with children's hands, not today." She texted Rosalie and picked a corridor without televisions. Upstairs, Rosalie reread the resignation. It was clean, true, unbearable. Lilith's message arrived. Amelia, upset, heard "man with storm eyes." Says she'll stop drawing robots to fix things. Rosalie saw a small girl putting down a pencil as if it were a grenade. She rose. She found them in an alcove where the building forgot it was an empire. Amelia sat cross-legged, brave, ready to make a mistake. Rosalie knelt. "Your drawings help the world," she said. "They don't hurt it." "But I made it real," Amelia said. "You made paper beautiful," Rosalie answered. "Adults made rumors." She kissed a temple. Adrian leaned into her. Lilith mouthed a thank you. Aaron stood at the corner, unseen until he chose to be seen. He took one step and stopped as if the air were a courtroom. "May I?" he asked. Rosalie hesitated, then nodded. He crouched to Amelia's height. "I read reports for a living," he said softly. "They are not as brave as your drawings." "Do you have storm eyes?" Amelia asked. "I have made storms," he said. "I am trying to learn sunlight." A notification chimed. Cheryl's message hit the crisis thread. Leak escalated. Kevin's feature moved up. 30 minutes. The alcove sighed the children away. Rosalie stood. Aaron did too. "I will go," he said. "You manage the rest." Evening arrived. The city reflected itself in countless indifferent windows. In a penthouse, silence came like a bailiff. Aaron entered, set his phone on the counter, opened his laptop, and wrote the statement no one else could write. It named failures and asked for nothing. It centered the people his decisions had endangered, the council whose clarity kept the company breathing, and the children who deserved lives without headlines. He placed the prepared resignation on the marble and folded it like a flag. He rehearsed the only line that mattered. "Whatever this costs me, they will not pay." He called Camden. "If a sacrifice is required," he said, "use me." He called Cheryl and ordered minors kept out of framing, and any temptation to make Rosalie a spectacle killed on arrival. He called Dalton to ask what else could shield them. "A prayer," Dalton said. "And lawyers." Aaron ended the calls and turned off the lights. In the dark, his reflection disappeared, and with it, the man he had performed. What remained was a father he hoped to learn to be if he was granted the smallest, strictest chance. He printed the statement, placed it beside the resignation, and steadied his breath, preparing to exchange power for protection without hesitation for their tomorrow. He spoke to the quiet as if it could carry consent. "Let the damage stop with me." Rain stitched the city into quiet. Lilith had settled the twins upstairs. The apartment smelled of oranges and ink. Rosalie stood at the sink, wrists damp, when a soft knock came. The kind that asked, not demanded. Aaron stood in the doorway without lawyers, holding a folded page and the solemnity of someone who had rehearsed loss. He didn't step in until she moved aside. He placed the page on the counter and kept his hands visible, as if before a truth that required surrender. "I came to ask for a chance to make amends," he said. "No more secrets. No tactics that make you collateral. I'll take instruction. I'll take the blame." He unfolded the resignation letter he had written in the dark. "I'll take the fault. Just please protect them." She didn't touch the letter. She studied his posture, not his words. The man who once loved legacy more than love had arrived without armor. "Sit," she said. The kitchen table was nicked by crayons and science kits. "I will return only on my terms. You will sign them now and you will honor them later, or I leave and keep leaving." He nodded. "Name the terms." "First, an ironclad media plan that protects the minors. No faces, no innuendo, no redemption arc. Cheryl issues factual briefs only, vetted by me. Second, an internal purge led by Dalton with authority to strip, suspend, or refer. Third, full executive transparency to the board. Rolling disclosures, governance reforms, audit trails regulators could follow." "Yes," he said. "You won't argue?" "I forfeited that indulgence. If I ever try, take this letter and walk." She slid a legal pad to him. "Write it in your hand, sign each condition. Add that your resignation can be executed at my discretion if any are breached." He wrote without pausing. His signature looked smaller than it had when everything bore it. She dated each page and initialed the margins. Upstairs, a book thumped. Lilith's hush followed. "Is there anything I can say that isn't strategy?" he asked. "You can say you will do the work when no one claps," she said, "and that you will not resent me for the cost." "I will do the work. I will not resent you." "Then we begin." The team gathered by phone and screen. Miles joined first. He listened to Rosalie outline the guardrails and exhaled. "You'll have cash projections hourly," he said. "Treasury will move to your cadence." Eleanor came next. "Full support. Board authorizations will reflect your terms. If anyone blinks, I unblink them." Cheryl joined from a ring-lit square. "Quiet, factual press brief," she agreed. "2 sentences, no adjectives. Cleared by you and Camden." "Good," Rosalie said. "We win with boring." Dalton spoke last. "We suspected Brent, and the artifacts hold. To expose the conduit completely, we need a sting that looks like greed's lucky day." Rosalie unrolled the plan. "We seed a document that appears to confirm a phantom divestiture valuable to Atlas. It lives in a locked container named for a code the leak watches. The access trail includes a false cleanup window so anyone copying thinks the file will vanish. We water it with the right metadata and wait." "Bait only Brent's orbit can taste," Dalton said. "Knowledge stays on this call. If it travels, we know the direction." Miles cleared his throat. "What if the bait detonates?" "It can't," Brielle said, sliding into frame. "The document references a trust and a subsidiary already shuttered. It's theater with receipts." Aaron listened to the structure of Rosalie's voice, the hum of work keeping the company breathing. Reverence, not romance, flickered over his face. "Camden is looping in," Eleanor said. "He'll anchor the judge briefing if Kevin escalates." "Kevin will escalate," Cheryl sighed. "With this spare brief, he'll have to fill holes with speculation." "While they tire, we move," Rosalie said. They moved that night. Dalton's team spun up the honey file, stamped logs, and placed it where a scavenger would see it. Rosalie drafted the board transparency protocol and had Aaron co-sign each checkpoint. He didn't balk when she tightened a clause or sharpened a penalty. When he asked a question, it was how to cause less harm faster. Near midnight, Lilith tucked the twins and slid a note under the kitchen door. "You are not alone." Rosalie touched the paper, remembering the first apartment after exile, the folding table that cut her palms, the cases she took to learn to breathe fire. She had built a life that did not require him. Now she was building a shield that could include him without collapsing. Dalton pinged. Movement. A login hopped from a shared terminal to a masked endpoint and out toward a vendor shell. "He's taking the bait," Dalton said. Handoff pattern matches Helena's shell. Packet split and recombined. "Is it Brent?" Eleanor asked. "Or someone carrying water for him?" "Credential family ties to his office. Physical proximity pings put him on the floor." "Capture everything," Rosalie said. "Chain, checksum, clock." Aaron felt the quiet that comes when a problem finally shows its face. What happens to him? Due process, Dalton said. Then consequence. The sting finished its inhale. Logs wrote to secure storage. Dalton requested the judge's after-hours line. Eleanor's name opened the door. Camden authorized emergency filings. Miles locked treasury. Cheryl drafted the 2 sentences. Rosalie looked at the table of faces. Competence gathered by respect. We're not done, she said. But this is the turn, she faced Aaron. Do you accept the terms for the rest of the road? He lifted the letter he had brought. I signed them because I am late, he said. I will keep them because I want to be worthy of being on the road at all. She nodded. Outside, rain thinned to a whisper. Inside, the sting held, the board aligned, and the brief waited. They would spend whatever dawn cost. For the first time since the past knocked on the present, hope moved from rumor to plan. The courthouse buzzed under glass, air bright with cameras and the metallic smell of wet coats. Helena arrived first, filing a motion to compel discovery into Rosalie's conflict of interest, her voice smooth with practiced indignation. She cast outside counsel as compromised, a woman whose private life contaminated governance, and asked for depositions, phone dumps, and unsealed files. Rosalie rose before the syllables settled. Your Honor, we anticipated this tactic. She handed up a packet, sealed affidavits establishing custody and privacy protections, a memorandum citing child protection statutes and shield laws, and an evidentiary proffer tying Atlas's petition to internal malfeasance. Brielle placed exhibits like anchors, timestamps, credential trees, and a chain that pointed past rumor to Brent's door. Helena objected. The public deserves transparency, especially where counsel's private life intersects corporate triage. The judge peered over her glasses. Curiosity is not a legal standard. She read and nodded once. Affidavits are accepted under seal. Child privacy protections apply. The motion to compel broad discovery into counsel's private affairs is denied. A ripple crossed the gallery. Rosalie continued, voice level. We also submit a supplemental declaration from compliance detailing a leak chain. The predicate for Atlas's emergency filings relies on tainted sourcing. The judge gestured. Call your witness. Dalton stepped forward with the gravity of a man who counts only verifiable things. He walked the court through logs, checksum verifications, and a calendar sync exploit, connecting endpoints to a vendor shell Helena's team controlled. Helena tried to pivot. Even if there were improprieties, Weston remains a danger to counterparties. A freeze is warranted. Rosalie's reply landed like a scalpel. Governance is being reformed in public view. The danger is not the patient. It is the poison introduced by a competitor and an executive acting in concert. The judge recessed. In the hallway, Atlas's attorneys fanned like chess bishops. A second front opened. A hostile acquisition notice hit the wire, Atlas offering lifeboats to jittery shareholders. On another floor, Camden and Eleanor executed Rosalie's counterplan, phones pressed to ears, voices firm. Emergency financing closed with covenants, independent monitors, board refresh, compensation resets, and Brent's immediate removal, all contingent on court approval of the consent order. Miles updated models in real time. Runway recovered, he murmured. If we hold price through close, the door slams on the bid. Cheryl crafted a spare holding statement. Brielle drafted a motion enjoining Atlas from trading on misappropriated information. Dalton watched elevators as if truth might step out wearing a badge. Court reconvened. The judge returned with a tempered edge. The consent order stands. Weekly sealed reports continue. Any deviation will be sanctioned. Atlas's request for broader relief. Denied. Pending the leak investigation. Helena's nostrils thinned. She turned to the press scrum waiting like weather. Microphones gathered at the courthouse steps. Helena lifted her chin. Today's ruling protects secrecy, not stakeholders. In due course, questions about undisclosed relationships, about secret heirs, will require sunlight. the phrase jumped to feeds in seconds. Before reporters completed the pivot, Aaron stepped through the line, posture unadorned, eyes steady. He stood between Helena and the cameras, shielding the woman behind him with the simplest geometry available, a body taking up the blast. "My failures are mine alone," he said, each word iron. "Our counsel is beyond reproach. She has protected employees, pensions, and due process. Any attempt to exploit children for leverage is beneath the rule of law." The scrum stuttered. Rosalie did not react, except to hand Brielle a pen. "File the injunction motion now." Brielle ran. Inside again, the reversal arrived. Dalton's team, working under the preservation order, finished correlating the final handoff. Brent's credentials, after-hours access, packet splits routed to Helena's shell company, and payouts disguised as consulting. Camden entered the record with the board's resolution. Brent suspended effective immediately, referred for prosecution, barred from premises, compensation frozen. Helena demanded to voir dire. The judge permitted limited questions. Dalton answered without heat. "Yes, the logs include MAC addresses. Yes, credentials rotated. Yes, we verified physical presence by access point triangulation. No, there is no innocent explanation consistent with this pattern." She turned to Brent's empty chair. "Where is the witness?" "Rosalie." "Unavailable and represented." The judge lifted her gavel a fraction. "Atlas's injunction collapses under tainted sourcing. Emergency relief is denied. The case against Weston is dismissed without prejudice as to refiling on clean evidence. This court retains jurisdiction to enforce the consent order and to police any further misuse of minors' identities." Outside, the market read the rulings faster than headlines. Atlas's hostile bid wobbled, then tripped over the covenants Camden and Eleanor had snapped in place. Emergency financing stabilized Weston's meters. Miles reported green where there had been yellow and red. Cheryl released the two-sentence statement. Facts, reforms, gratitude to the court, nothing else. Investors inhaled. Kevin, holding a script gone stale, lowered his camera. He watched Aaron thank a janitor wheeling a bin through the lobby. He watched Rosalie pass microphones as if they were uninteresting weather. The story refused the spectacle he'd prepared. Helena stood with her team beneath a limestone frieze and calculated appeal. The math did not reward it. Atlas's phone lit. The coup had failed. The vendor shell shuddered. Quietly, their comms went black. Night came clean. In the war room, people who had worked past exhaustion stood in a ring and let silence confirm what their bodies already knew. Dalton closed his laptop. Brielle leaned against a window and laughed once, surprised by the sound. Miles texted Treasury a single word. Clear. Camden clasped Eleanor's shoulder. Cheryl deleted a draft titled Arc and wrote a new one titled Boring Wins. Rosalie looked across the table at Aaron. No triumph, only relief. He met her gaze with something simpler than gratitude and harder than promise. Attention disciplined into respect. Around them, Weston stabilized, not through genius, but through repair. The case was dismissed. The acquisition was blocked. The company, improbably, still breathed. For tonight, that was victory enough. They exhaled together, finally, as the city's lights gentled into Mercy 4. The first morning after the rulings felt like air after rain, thin, honest, and not mine to command. I parked a block from the twins' school because Rosalie said we would do this quietly, not royally. Lilith had braided Amelia's hair into something architectural. Adrian carried a robot chassis in his backpack like a heart with screws. We crossed the last bit of sidewalk together, 3 shadows and a wish that no camera would find us. Monica waved from the gate. I learned, for the first time, the pleasure of stopping a few yards early and letting small feet finish the journey alone. Co-parenting has its own tempo. Mine used to be conquest. Now it's calendars. Mondays, I make breakfast when the twins sleep at my place. Eggs the color of applause, toast that doesn't try too hard. Tuesdays, I handle pickup. Wednesdays, Rosalie and I meet at the grocery store like civilians arguing over pasta shapes and laughing before we can pretend not to. On Fridays, I take the late shift on science projects. Saturday mornings are for pancakes at her place, because the kitchen there knows our history and forgives us. I have learned the angles of a car seat buckle faster than I ever read a prospectus. We built a workshop in the corner room of the apartment I used to use for nothing but display. I canceled the art consultant and kept the workbench. Adrian named the space the hangar. We arranged bins of resistors like tiny constellations and labeled drawers in block letters. He tilts his head when a puzzle resists, the same way I did as a boy strangling a knot out of string. I never knew that habit meant anything until I saw it on him. Together we solder in companionable silence, the iron's breath like crickets. When a circuit hums, he grins, and I am the richest man on any exchange. Amelia chooses the couch across from us and storyboards what she calls a family adventure. She draws with a seriousness I once reserved for growth plans. 4 figures under a sky that keeps changing color until she's satisfied. A robot with a star on its chest. A boat that looks suspiciously like my company's first logo, but with wings. She asks questions like a director. If we had to cross a river, who carries the map? Mom, Adrian says. Papa carries the snacks. I don't flinch at the title anymore. The first time she tested it, I went to the kitchen and breathed until I could return as a man who didn't make the word earn him. Rosalie and I do our work where the light is ordinary. Sometimes that's at her dining table, laptops open, Dalton's reports a calm drum. Sometimes it's in the doorway at drop-off when the children run ahead and the world quiets just long enough for gratitude to speak. The romance, if that's what this is becoming, does not announce itself with flowers. It arrives as reliability. Texts about piano recitals, calendars shared without ceremony, a habit of answering on the first ring. The thrill is not spectacle. It's competence, gentled. One night the kids fall asleep before the credits, and Lilith retreats with the soft tyranny of a saint. Rosalie and I step onto the porch. The air is honest again. I bring 2 mugs of tea because coffee makes apologies sound like strategy. We sit close enough to feel the warmth rise from old wood. The city has the decency to dim. It's quieter than boardrooms. I am worse at love speeches than numbers, but numbers failed me when they mattered most. I measured love in legacy and almost lost my own, I say. The truth is small, but heavy. I built tall things and let tenderness be the floor I never looked at. You were the person holding the house up. I called that unstrategic. It was worship of the wrong god. She doesn't spare me with a quick reply. Night gives her room to consider whether she believes the man on this porch is the one she could build anything with. Love is a daily practice, not a dynasty, she says at last. We choose it when nobody claps. We choose it when headlines are cruel. We choose it when the dishwasher floods. I'll mop, I say. It makes her laugh, and the sound lands in my chest like amnesty. I don't reach for her hand. I let the space stay respectful. The porch becomes a provisional church where vows are not performed, only prepared. The next week, after school drop-off and a meeting that didn't try to devour us, I ask her to come by the workshop. Adrian has labeled a new drawer, Fasteners of Destiny. He approves my plan with the seriousness of a regulator. When Rosalie arrives, the table is clean except for a rolled page and a small box. The paper is a simple blueprint titled, in pencil, Home. It isn't a mansion. It isn't even a purchase. It's a plan. Square footage of safety, windows for music, a room that can be messy without shame, a porch that can hold hard truths, a little garden where Amelia swears robots grow if you water them with starlight. I set a ring on the page, plain, not an apology, not a price tag. I am asking, I say, whether you will consider building this with me, slowly, imperfectly, as 2 people who have learned what not to be. She looks at the blueprint first, the ring last. Then she speaks not as a heroine in a movie, but as the woman who saved a company by insisting facts could be love if you made them. Conditions, she says. Therapy, together and apart, without defensiveness. Time, Not the performative kind, the kind that survives dull days. And a vow, forgiveness as an action, not an absolution. We keep choosing each other even when choosing looks like folding laundry. I agree, I say. I mean it like I mean oxygen. She slips the ring on, not to end a story, but to begin a practice. The blueprint rustles, as if paper itself were relieved. We don't rush announcements. Cheryl can rest. Camden and Eleanor send cryptic texts, 2 emojis that mean, in their language, we're proud. Brielle storms in for celebratory takeout and pretends she isn't Misty. Dalton brings a plant. Miles delivers brownies he claims he baked. Kevin writes a piece titled Boring Wins, which is his way of apologizing without ruining the headline cadence. Spring arranges itself into picnic weather. We drive to a field where the grass forgives footprints, and we unpack sandwiches Lilith swears are better than restaurants. Savannah arrives late, having saved 3 small humans before noon. She takes a photo I will never share online. 4 figures on a quilt and a robot with a star on its chest. Amelia sits with her sketch pad and draws the same image but truer, lines that feel like breath, a sky that refuses one color. Adrian tests a solar panel he smuggled into the backpack. Rosalie leans back on her elbows, sunlight on her face, unafraid. I used to think triumph was applause. Today it feels like Amelia handing me a drawing without asking whether I'll frame it. Like Adrian asking if I want the first turn with the controller. Like Rosalie resting her palm over mine where the grass tickles our wrists. Maybe redemption is not the grand arc, but the daily, small, correct choice. Maybe legacy is not the building, but the room inside it, where laughter echoes. Before we pack up, Amelia lifts her sketch for our inspection. Do you see? She asks. The sky keeps changing, but the people stay. I nod like a man who finally understands weather. We walk back to the car with the kind of tired that promises sleep, not escape. The road home is short and wide, and because love should ask, not assume, I want to leave you with a question we finally learned to answer with our lives. Can love feel new when it finally chooses humility over pride?